Hey everyone, thanks for checking in. This is Arnie with Customs Manager, and it's a privilege to have you at the first inaugural weekly wrap-up. This is a 30-minute session where we go through what happened over the last week in the field of customs, global trade, export control, sanctions, and bits and bumps here and there. It's an informal session, and it's just really quick. And the idea is that while you're eating, while you're enjoying your lunch, I'm going to run through some of the updates, some of the things that I've seen while I was monitoring legislation over the last weeks. And then we're going to have a session where you guys can ask some questions or share some views. You don't have to ask questions. And this session is recorded, so you need to know that too. All right, guys. Again, lunch. So you go ahead, and I'll have some slides that I want to share with you, and I'll just go ahead and do that. Share it. Let me do that. And here we are. Cool. Good. So given that this is the inaugural one, let me share with you some of the reason, the raison d'etre, so to speak. So this, what we've heard always, when I speak to you guys and also to our clients, is that a customs manager and an export control manager and a sanctions manager is often a lone wolf. He's a person that sits in a company and needs to do all of these things and has no one to talk to, or not readily to check in regularly. And so therefore there is a forum like this one where we can come together. The second thing I hear is that people know that law changes every week. They know that customs law changes every week, and export control laws and sanctions change all the time, but there's just no time in a day to monitor, to make sure that you've not missed anything. So therefore, we have this service which does it for you, basically. And then those that are not able or can't or have forgotten or have no time to read the magazines that come out on Mondays and Tuesdays, this is the new thing. Based on feedback, it's a weekly wrap-up. And what it means is it summarizes everything that was in the magazines on Monday and Tuesday. So we've got two magazines, the Customs Manager and the Export Control and Sanctions Manager. And then we're going to draw from those to bring the highlights. So it's not everything that's in the magazines, but it's just the key things that I found particularly interesting and that you may find also quite relevant. So there's a mailing list that you can subscribe to. It's on customsmanager.info. So you go there, leave your email address, and then you're going to get on Monday, you're going to get the Customs Manager. On Tuesday, you're going to get the Export Control and Sanctions Manager. And then on Friday, you're going to get a wrap-up email. And the wrap-up email is this session, plus whatever information is there to share. And in that way, you should have the full knowledge and awareness of what happened over the last week. So therefore, on Monday, I'm going to tell you, on Tuesday, I'm going to tell you, on Friday, I'm going to summarize what I told you on Monday and Tuesday, so nobody can complain they didn't know. They're going to be surprised by any legislation or any updates. So that's the idea of this thing. Happens every Friday at noon UK time, at 1 p.m. Brussels time, and that's 7 a.m. Eastern time, and whatever time this is in your time zone, I don't know. But I apologize for those on the Pacific coast. You basically are going to be night owls and join us like at 4 in the morning or something. So this is hopefully going to allow quite a lot of sections of the US on the East Coast to join us, and most of Europe, and many parts of the Middle East and India as well, because I know the Indians, they work late, and they, not all, but those in export control, sanctions, and customs do. If you want to join this session live, you've got to sign up. Sign up happens on the website. It's really easy. Put in the details, and away you go. And that way you can see it live. The benefit of joining us live is you get to meet everybody else, and you get to ask your questions live. If you want to register, you need to register for each event individually. Again, it doesn't take long. We will theme them. So that means today we don't have a theme. It's our inaugural session. And then to next week, however, and I really, really, really would like you to come. If you can make it, please join us, because we're going to have a keynote speaker. And she's from Texas, and that means her start time that day is 5 in the morning, just for us. And that's really, really cool, because next week's International Customs Day celebration, and I really want us to all be there and celebrate. You know, we don't have to make a big fuss about it, but it is an important day for us in the community, so you should be there. Then the events are going to run through every week, notably on the 2nd and the 9th. I'm going to be in the States myself, so I'm looking for a guest host to host this session. Again, it's an informal one. If you're interested in running it the way we're doing it right now, please get in touch, because I can't physically be there on the 2nd and the 9th. So I'm interested in anybody who wants to cover this. I'll provide the details. All you need to do is log on, say hello to everyone, present this, and done. Note also on March the 8th, it's International Women's Day. So I'm looking to have a speaker who should be a woman, who's explaining us why about her career in international trade and customs. So if that woman is you and you're interested to take the floor and explain why a career in customs and global trade is perfect and what it now needs for women in this workplace, that we would really like to hear from you. Just get in touch. So then, wait, I'm clicking. After this, so after the 30 minutes, we're going to have a lunch and learn. So the lunch and learn aims at having one topic, and then that topic you're gonna hear about and you're gonna talk about. So today, just after this session, we're going to talk about the new UK veterinary border. And there was a conference yesterday, and there's a conference, and there's the 30-minute succinct session. So the wrap up first, and then 30 minutes on a topic, lunch and learn, that covers 1 hour of lunchtime. And that is ongoing education and training. Everybody needs to continuously upskill. So why not do it during your lunch hour? Why not get the current updates and then 30 minutes of training, and boom, your CPDs, your continuous education program is done. You don't need to invest in anything. You don't need to hire an external consultant. All you got to do is do this and get your staff and your people to always jump on this call, because you're always going to learn something and you're always going to be updated. I'm not going to go through this. These slides will be made available so you can check it all out. Lunch and learns are subject to registration, and they are payable unless you have a premium plan subscription, in which this is free, in which case this is also free. And they are like £49, so you're going to get all of this free. This week is BTOM and risk categories. If you don't know what that is, happy good for you. You'll learn it in about 20 minutes. And then next week, CBAM, which is super controversial and super complicated. I can't explain it to you. I mean, 30 minutes is a push. Now we're going to do lots of other good things, as you can see here, including CDS exports. We're going to talk about, as the second year of the war in Ukraine coming up, we'll talk about Russian sanctions and due diligence updates. And then we're going to have, in March, we're going to look at the Union Customs Code reform and the customs data, the trust and checks data. So that's all the program for the lunch and learn. And again, I'm looking for a guest host. So if you're interested in running the lunch and learn because you are a trainer, or you're interested in a topic and you want 30 minutes to speak to expert audience about it, you just let me know. If you want to watch all of this on demand, then there is a link for you on the YouTube channel as well. So what's on the agenda today? Well, I hope you're enjoying your lunch, because we're going to talk about what we talked about in the Customs Manager magazine on Monday and the previous week. And then we're going to talk about what we talked about in the Export Control and Sanctions Manager this Tuesday and the previous week. And the previous week talked about everything that happened in December. It's almost a month worth of content wrapped into 30 minutes here. So it's going to be Customs Manager now, Export Control Manager, and Sanctions Manager next. Then we're going to look at what we're doing next week and prepare you kind of what are the key events happening next week in the EU, in the UK, and in the US. From a customs and export control perspective, at least from what I'm seeing. This must not be complete. You might see something else, so please let us know. And then we're going to look at upcoming events and trainings. So upcoming events globally on the global stage, but those are trainings that obviously Customs Manager offers. And then your questions. Okay, so far so good? Everybody happy? Great. So let's jump into the highlights from the last edition of the Customs Manager magazine, which came out on Monday. So we have split this into 4 parts. First, general and international, which means everything related to customs in general. You know, we monitor EU, UK, and US. So there may be stuff in here that is globally applicable. So we're going to look at that first. So what are the highlights from this week's edition and last week's edition? Well, there's no surprise to you that the EU, UK, and US HTS tariffs have been updated. So this is of great importance for companies in order to make sure that you are up to date with your master data and in your systems to make sure that your goods are not stuck and you don't encounter any delays. So every customs manager has to carry out some work towards the end of the year to update the tariff. And the challenge is that these updates happen still in the year. So the EU is pretty good because they've updated this on the 31st of October 23, but the US has published twice now amendments and continues to update this throughout the year. So it's really important that you are constantly updated about the tariffs. The UK's done the same. They've come in very late, and now last week they've updated and keep updating. So this is a period of change, and therefore you need to constantly be aware of what the tariff is doing. We welcome Ian Saunders from the US as the new WCO Secretary General, and we wish him well. I'm in Brussels today, so I should just jump over there and say hi, see if he's willing to see me on a Friday afternoon, you think? Don't forget that at the end of February, MC13 is happening at the WTO, and there are some pushes now on what we're going to get. For us, what's really important at least what I see, is the situation with electronic commerce and the introduction of potential customs duty on electronic commerce transaction. There is a moratorium at the moment that prohibits this, but that is due to run out, and I'm hearing noises that this time the WTO is not going to renew it, which would be really, really bad for the trade community, because that would mean potentially downloads, uploads, and whatever might be dutiable in the future. How that's even going to work, I don't know. But point is, please look into this. MC13 could be more explosive than we now know. So, over to the European Union, what are the things that I want to highlight to you guys that you should check out? Well, if you're interested in duty suspensions and you know how you're going to how that works and how you're going to get around paying customs duty when you import into the EU, then you should check out the suspension law updates, right? Which lists all the products that are subject to duty suspension. You can find that in the Target 2, but here is the overall law and the list, and it's an easy way to find out which products are concerned. And if you wonder the smart way of how we can, try to get customs duty to be reduced, then that is a way we should explore. I know that I'm saying this because I'm a geek, and I'm also a member of the Trade Contact Group, so obviously I'm a bit biased here. But the EU Trade Contact Group minutes from November have been published. I can only say, for those interested in the Union Customs Code reform, but also in CBAM, you've got to check this out. Because not only do you have the EU Commission talking about their point of view on CBAM as well as the UCC, but also you have the voices of trade. So whether it be Eurocommerce, AmCham, Ocean, World Shipping Council, the whole woodyard, the post office, the FIA, Confiat, the Silka, all of these European trade associations, they sit around the table and they discuss these proposals and feed back information that they've received from their members to the European Commission, and the European Commission gets to respond. And this is as close as you're going to get to understanding what's actually being discussed there. So do check that out. CBAM obviously is in everybody's mind. Everybody's talking about it. Just had a call right now about someone from my local town talking about CBAM. My local town, that's 36,000 people in a place in Germany where there are more cows than people. And she calls me and talks to me about CBAM. So this is big. If you don't know what CBAM is, you've got to check it out. All the details are here. When you get these slides, everything is hyperlinked. You can click on it and you can find information. Yeah, just make sure you find out where to get this presentation. I'll tell you where you get it. So what's changed in CBAM? So I'm not going to talk about CBAM because that's next week in the Lunch and Learn. Default values are published, really important. National competences authorities updated, very important. New information sheets on cement, electricity, fertilizer, aluminium, and the checklist has been updated. You can find all of this information online, or you can simply click here. So if you want to save time, click here. And if you need to understand CBAM, here's your support guide. And if you need to prepare a report for the 31st of Jan, please access. It's a new thing about transparency law and VAT. And is not necessarily a concern for customs, but mainly for indirect taxes. And it mainly deals with online sellers. So I'm not going to talk about this much more than just to tell you that there are new rules to combat fraud on cross-border payments in the EU. And if you want to check it out, you can see it here. If you're interested in e-commerce systems, there is a new report, an update to the existing report. And that report allows you to understand where we are in terms of electronic customs. And I've just shown you the MASP plan here. And you can already see how busy this looks. Even if you don't know what all the fishes are and all the projects are, it looks busy. Yes, and so the EU is working really, really hard to automate and update and modernize and electronicify the Union Customs Code with electronic systems that make a difference in a complex world of EU 27. And a customs professional needs to understand this because we will be impacted by it. Because out of the sudden, there's a new registration requirement, there's a new data element that's needed, and therefore it is important that we keep up to date with the MASP, what the EU calls the MASP. So, but you also see that after 26, it kind of eases it off. So there's a lot of change, as you can see, happening in 2024. So you've got to be ready for that. And ICS 2 phase 3 is going to be one of the key ones. You will have seen in the news that there is an agreement between the EU and the UK on the rules of origin for automotive trade. So if you're in automotive trade, or if you're just interested in rules of origin, this you should check out. Because it is about a crucial technology, and that is batteries and electronic vehicles, what we're supposed to all drive now. And the question is, how are we going to trade these products between the EU and the UK in the future? And how do the rules of origin meet reality on the ground? And if it is too difficult for the rules of origin to be met, then that would mean a duty imposition in trade between the UK and the EU. That's not what necessarily is good for neither the EU nor the UK, given that costs are already spiraling out of control. So if you add customs duty to such an elemental element of our future transition from fossil fuels to other less pollutant ways of traveling, then probably imposing a duty on batteries and electronic vehicles is not the way to go. There is much more detail on this, including an analysis of what the current rules of origin are under the derogation, what they would have been had there not been a derogation agreed, and why you need to be really careful to understand that this is a one-off extension. A one-off extension until the 31st of December, 2026. And if that means you have now 2 years, if you're an advisor to automotive companies, do you want to make sure they are aware of the one-off extension? And that's written in law. And given that it's written in law, it will be difficult to remove. Therefore, efforts must be undertaken to make sure that people change production or adjust to the new rules of origin in the next couple of years. Moving onwards to the United Kingdom, what were the updates here? Well, lots of updates here, but I'm going to summarize it. And again, it's just a fraction of the highlights. We have a timetable for the transition for CDS exports, and you can find out more about CDS for exports on the link. There is now a declarant checklist for exports for CDS. There's a guide for filing declaration under CDS, and there is a guide to the movement reference numbers. So if you're interested in filing customs declarations in the United Kingdom, go to check this out. CBAM, we have a UK CBAM, woohoo! So that's happening by 2027. There's going to be a consultation, and we've summarized what we need to know about CBAM from the UK. Yeah. Rules of origin and preferential tariffs in the UK updated. So that means all of these have changed, as you can see here. And now there's a question of what is that change? And I cannot tell you because I need to look into each of them to figure out which ones changed and how. The key one, what will be important to you is for you to check out which ones you're concerned with. So either you have clients that work with the Andean tariff, then that's what you look at. or you are in, say, South Africa, and you wish to know what the UK-South African trade agreement is and how it has changed. So you're going to look here, click here, you're going to get the latest version, and then probably with your HS codes, you're going to find your rule of origin. Once you've got your rule of origin, you're then going to check whether that's changed or not. So key for you to know is that's been updated. So it is worthwhile you checking out if your rules of origin have changed. The big highlight for the UK, however, happened yesterday. Yesterday, we did a huge 3-hour veterinary border conference. So export health certificate, procedures and processes, rules and readiness. This whole recording will be up, hopefully by the early next week. 3 hours, well worth watching. I was amazed on what I heard. Online conference discussed the preparedness of EU, UK industry, and the question there was, and I know we have a lot of Irish on the call, is Ireland ready for SBS checks with the UK? And also, is Germany and France, are they ready? Are the vets ready to issue UK export health certificates? If you did not take part in this conference, watch it on demand. It is worth your while. You need to know more about veterinary border and the changes coming on 31st of Jan. Here are tons of things you can look at, right? There's guides, there's decision trees, there's what you need to know and do, there's stuff specific to plant products, SPS pre-arrival notification, the IPAFs, phytosanitary guide. There's completing the export health certificate to export to Great Britain. I mean, you can have a field day with this if you want. And then there's more information about how we're going to upload PDF documents, and you can access all of these details directly from this slide deck as well. Turning to the United States, then, this is going to be a bit quicker. Key points to remember here is that we have 30 new actions to strengthen supply chain security, critical to America's economic and national security. So you want to know what these measures are and to what extent they can be used in other parts of the country, and where you are. You want to know also, if you're not in the US, how this may affect you, because one act in the US last year, as you remember, triggered such a big backlash on the Inflation Reduction Act on the EU side. So we need to make sure that we keep abreast with what's happening in America. And obviously, if you're in America, then this will be a key focus of you. I am excited to be traveling to the US for the Trade Facilitation Cargo Security Summit. And look what we're talking about. We're talking about education, illicit opiates, artificial intelligence, green trade, e-commerce, forced labor, all of these things that are so important and which really show you where customs is evolving to. So the US is leading that way. And if you're into more geeky analysis, then you need to stay up to date with the customs decisions and bulletins. There were 3 published, and they are packed with legal analysis, tariff decisions, and so on. You can access them here. I'm just going to jump really quickly because time's advancing so much. I only have 4 minutes into the highlights of the last edition of the Export Controls and Sanctions Manager. So you can see here. And here, obviously, you need to understand that we're not only covering export control and sanctions, we're also covering due diligence and anti-money laundering as well. And there were quite a lot of updates, actually. First of all, we're getting very much closer to mandatory corporate due diligence law in the European Union. So it's time for you to check this out. There's a new authority being created, the AMLA, and we have our first guide on crypto and how that can lead to anti-money laundering issues. So got to check these out, and the links are here. Don't forget that the EU dual use reg was updated. That happened already in September, but it's now in force. So if you haven't checked out how Annex 1 has changed of the EU dual use regs, you better do that. Don't forget, if you're dealing with Germany, they're changing their export control system within the laws of the EU, of course, making it more efficient. And the US has published a really, really good 2023 year in review document that talks about EAR and ITAR export enforcement. Some of the fines that you may face in the US, you can see here. And this allows you quite simply to realize so many ways you can get into trouble. So you might want to check this out. In the 2nd edition of the Export Control Sanctions Manager, you'll have a breakdown of all the fines that you might be facing. By the way, if you're an advisor, a consultant, this is really good marketing. Don't forget that if you're into sanctions and you have a sanctions policy, you need to stay up to date with what's changing. And this is changing. We have a new dedicated framework for sanctions for Guatemala with the EU. There are lots of updates regarding Hamas in the terrorist lists, either of the UK, EU, or the UK, the EU, UK, or US, along with other allied partners. The US is now targeting the Houthis as well, but it does that via companies such as Global Tech Marine Services of the UAE and Cielo Maritime from Hong Kong. So maritime companies not from Yemen involved in supporting the Houthis. So this is getting quite complicated. So you've got to check out the details and understand how the networks interact. Because if you are saying, oh, we are not shipping from Yemen, so I'm not concerned about the Houthi thing, well, you're wrong, because as you can see, we are sanctioning normal sounding companies like Global Tech Marine Services in UAE, and we're sanctioning Cielo Maritime in Hong Kong. Well, what's wrong with them? It's just companies. You would never suspect this. So therefore, knowing the names and knowing how they're related to everything is also important. Don't forget, in Haiti, situation still stays. If you're dealing with Russia, obviously the publication of the 12 sanctions package is huge. You've got to check that out. The UK did the same, and the US also updated its sanctions laws, and all of them are underlinked here, and you can enjoy reading that. If you need more information on that, the frequently asked questions on sanctions against Russia and Belarus have also been updated, and you can see what changed here. All the links are here, just one click away. If you need to know more about the US, here is a detailed analysis of how you have to cross-reference everything to understand what the changes that the US made, how they're actually impacting law and your operation. So to navigate US export control updates to Russia or sanctions updates, you've got to go through all of these to understand what changed. I want to make sure that you are aware that there are freely readable for everyone to read documents always available on the main page of Customs Manager Info. They're publication highlights. So those that are not interested in having a paid subscription, you can always make sure there is information for you on that website that is free of charge for you to read. And that way, this serves kind of as a trial to see if that's interesting for you. And it's a low-fee subscription if you decide to join us. And what that subscription does, it makes this happen, right? Weekly wrap-ups, etc. So knowing that I'm shamelessly out of time, very quickly, what to expect in next week's update. Well, we're going to have a lot of recordings. The documents, the slides from last week's conference are there as well. We'll focus on ICS 2, Phase 3. It's coming out in June of this year. So we're going to have an article on this. You're going to hear more about CDS exports and for us to get ready to file customs declarations on export from the UK. There is a renewed focus on the mill certificate situation. So the question of what is a mill certificate, how do I get it, and what does it need, what does it say, and why do I need it for Russian sanctions? So we're going to focus on that in the two magazines. Preparations for MC13 I already mentioned. There's an update to the 999L license waiver and what replaces it. And of course, any other news and updates from the laws that I see, we'll put it in the magazine. The Customs Manager is published Mondays at 6 a.m. and the Export Control and Sanctions Manager is published on Tuesdays at 6 a.m. And then there's a wrap-up on Friday, so next week Friday, and that is then, and then that recording is then up later that day. And a wrap-up email is coming with on Friday evening. So we plan Saturday morning, depending on how I feel, where you have the recording of this, plus the slides, plus the link to the magazine, so you can combine it kind of all. And that way, we make sure you haven't missed a thing. One notification I should give you next week. Next week, for this wrap-up, we're going to celebrate the Customs Day. And I couldn't be more excited than to have Julie Ann Parks. She's Executive Director of RTX Corporation, and she deals with global customs. And she has volunteered. I'm so happy, I'm so delighted to be the keynote speaker. So we're going to sum up the updates from last week for next week, And then she's going to get about 15 minutes or so to give us a thought on the topic of customs engaging traditional and new partners with purpose. So Julie Ann Parks is going to be with us next week at 12 p.m. UK time. And it is not very often that we get to hear from so esteemed colleagues and experts in the field to deliver a keynote speech that is even recorded. So please, please do your best to attend, please. The events I've already mentioned. If you're interested in joining our live events, whether it be webinars, courses, training courses, education, the links here. And then if you're not interested in live sessions such as this one, but recorded on demand sessions, and voila, there's your link as well. And you can just have pre-recorded sessions. Next week's International Customs Day, and I can't wait to be there. Don't forget the WTO thing is going to be really interesting as well. I'd love to connect with you on socials. So here are the links where you can subscribe and do all your things. And that, my friends, is your weekly wrap up. Now, let me check out the time. It's a little bit over, but that's it. So have a quick breathe. And then we're going to have just 5 minutes for Q&As. If you have any questions on what I have said, then you can always use the chat, put that in the chat, or you can also just ask it. So questions? Everybody eating lunch? Good. Okay, cool. Good. Well, in that case, if you do have questions, it's info@customsmanager.org. And you can always ask them after the event. And if you're watching this on demand, the same happens, info@customsmanager.org. So always keep info@customsmanager.org. And that is it. Thank you very much for joining us. We are going to see each other over on the other side. Please connect now to your lunch and learn, and that's where we're going to talk about the UK veterinary controls. All right. I'll see you over there. And if I'm not seeing you there, I hope I see you next week. Don't forget, if you want to host these things, you can also contact me. Just contact me and we'll sort it out, even if it's just for a chat. Have a great week. And that's it. Wrap up number 1 completed. See you next week for International Customs Day. Bye.